Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
welcome in.
Thanks.
I think we'll just wait a second to let people get on here.
Okay.
Um, but I can just start with a little introduction. My name is Natalie. I am a senior with Crew. I'm involved with South Campus. Shout out to Park Stradley. But today we're here for the Do Well series with Crew Ohio State and the Thompson Institute. Um, and basically, if you resonate with any of these questions, this talk is for you. Are you an Ohio State student that wants to do college well, not just academically, but in all areas of life and the bigger picture? Are you anxious about what's in store for these next few months and years? If any of those resonate with you, then we would love for you to stay tuned because we are here today with Professor Scott LaCross from Fisher, and we're going to continue the Do Well series titled Real Conversations with OSU Professors About Flourishing in College. So, like I said, if you're just joining, my name is Natalie. I'm a senior with Crew, and originally I'm from California, but now I'm here in Columbus studying marketing, and we have Professor Scott LaCross with us today, who is a marketing professor in Fisher. I actually get to be one of his students this semester, which is really cool. But just a quick intro on him. Professor LaCrosse received his bachelor's from Miami University in Oxford, and his MBA from Northern Illinois University. And he has been a full-time lecturer in the Fisher College of Business since 2016. So thank you for joining us. We're
Yeah,
super excited to have you.
of
Um,
course.
is there anything you want to add to introduce yourself?
No, just that this is my first, I'm gonna be honest, my first experience with Instagram Live in any fashion. So I guess I'm just gonna jump right in, right? So does this mean I actually call myself a celebrity now? I'm not sure how that works. Okay,
Yeah.
good. I can add that to my title, Instagram Live celebrity.
Yes, and
Cool,
connoisseur, if you will.
cool.
Um, yeah, well, we can just jump right into kind of the first question to see where it takes us. So, in your time in undergrad, what were some of the pressures or challenges that you faced?
Well, I would say probably the first ones are very common to most people in college, right? It's
Mm.
where you're switching from kind of a pretty dependency lifestyle versus now you're independent, right? So that's a pretty big life change. And so, I was no different. I think I my first semester in college was not my best semester academically
Okay.
for that reason. So I think it was just kind of adjusting to like, all right, I'm basically responsible for all these aspects of life, and so I don't feel like I really came to college with that skill set. So it was a bit of a transition to make that right. And I think personally, though, I mean, that's sort of I think overall. I think personally, I mean, to be honest with you, I think I struggled initially kind of with just probably things that are common to other people, just insecurity and you're going to this place where there's so many people. In my case, I did have a roommate with somebody I knew from high school.
Okay.
That helped, but he played the tennis, so he was gone all the time. So I was kind of like, wow, sort of exciting, but also sort of scary and lonely. So I had to don't feel like I really knew how to connect with people very well. So it's a scary time. So it's to be out there on your own and kind of be separated from a lot of things that you've kind of had your whole life. So yeah, that was a struggle at first. It was an adjustment for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I resonate with that a lot coming here. I knew my older brother and my roommate who I met on Facebook, and it was a
Uh,
big adjustment to meet people and really just figure out, especially in such a big school, like where you fit and like who your people are. And that
yeah,
because there's just so much going on and it's hard to like sift through all of it.
absolutely. Well,
So,
because you think about like in high school, we're sort of you're kind of landlocked in a way. Like you're with the same people all the time. You sort of your friend group. Nothing to take away from friendships from high school, but you're kind of friends because you're just there, right? And then you go to college and you're like, well, now there's just people all over the place. You don't have the connection. So yeah, you're sort of figuring out, where do you want to fit in and kind of, that's a big adjustment to make, right?
right,
Uh,
right. Now it's like, who do you want to be? Who do you want to
yeah,
surround yourself with? Not just who have you always had by your side. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
So kind of looking for something more. relatable to students today, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges you like see facing students today?
Yeah. I mean, it's a different experience now than, I'm 20 years removed from it, right? So I imagine how much has changed in 20 years. I mean, I think definitely it's a much more competitive environment than it was. That's I feel that from students, and obviously I think the bar has been raised. I mean, in all aspects, and so I think that's just translates to pressure for sure. And part of that is there's just a lot more people, right? 20 years ago, I grew up in Cincinnati area of Ohio, and compared to when I was there to now, I mean, there's more than almost double the students is in that school. So there's more people, therefore there's more kind of higher expectations. And I think also it's a result of the culture we live in. And I'm not trying to, this isn't meant to culture bash, but we do live in a very sort of results oriented culture. And kids experience this from a young age now. I mean, which is different from when I grew up. I mean, I have three kids, ages 1 to 13,
Yeah.
across the spectrum. So, when I grew up, you play sports and you could play multiple sports, and because you like to play. And now having a 13-year-old and 9-year-old, it's like that you're expected to almost focus on a sport or a hobby or skill set, and almost be exclusively doing that since you're like 7 years old.
Right.
With the expectation, oh, well, we need to develop them to go on to get scholarships or be professional. And it's like, that's a lot of pressure for people who just want to do something, have fun. And so you take that now to college, and, it's very results oriented, obviously very, grades as kind of the metric of success, which, I don't necessarily focus on. So I think that's it. I think it's just naturally more competitive, which is a result of the culture. And then I also think part of it is, that question, what's how, students being successful at universities, like we have to really take a step back and say, what do we mean by success?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important question for students to think about, and really try to come away with, like, what does the success look like in university? And I think, culturally, it's like, well, grades and performance and this and getting a good job. And, I think we can redefine that a little bit and see it more as, success being, I am better equipped to go on to the next phase of life, right? Should be more about life preparation, I think, more than, specific grades and metrics. So I think that's sort of inherent to education, but I think there is an opportunity for us to say, all right, take a step back and say, what are the things I need to develop in these 4 years? And I think there's professional, and I think there's personal and relational things that, as a time to learn during your time at university. So.
No, definitely. I think that's a great point. Like, as you said, our culture has like a pretty rigid definition of success, and it's achievement oriented, and like
Yeah.
there's kind of a common way to measure that, but at the same time we have the ability to define it in our own lives and recognize that it's not only like what we have to show for at the end of our college years and like
Yeah.
or what job offer we're walking away with, but like how we developed as a person and like how that up for more success, however you define that later in life. Yeah.
I think you can have both too. I mean, I don't want to come across as like I'm not a believer in performance or high quality deliverables. Of course I am, but I think there's sort of two areas to university, just given what it is. I think there's the academic side, which is important, right? Obviously, you're learning skills, but I don't believe it's all important, right? I know people in my life who will admit that they probably were just too focused on the academic side of the equation in college, right? And part of that was because that's something they felt they could control a little bit more, right? It was a little bit safer. It's like I can control that area of my life, because it's spending the time studying. But they would admit that they, maybe lacked or missed out on some of the other side, which is building relationships.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you can go the other extreme where you're just all about relationships and like forget the academics. So I think being successful in university is having a healthy balance of learning the skill sets that will help me professionally, but also recognizing that this is a really unique time when you're around people from different, lifestyles and cultures and opinions and mindsets. And it's a great way to learn how to just connect with people and develop relationships. Because at the end of the day, whatever you end up doing after college is all about relationships, right? And I talk about that in my marketing classes. It's like you're going to be working with people.
Yeah.
So it's not so much about all the knowledge you have, it's how well can you connect with people. And I think that's a huge skill set that you develop in university.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's something that carries over, not just in like your personal life, but also to your professional life, like having
Yeah.
those skills and being able to work with people and be compassionate. And yeah, I think that's really well said. It's a balance.
Yep.
What wisdom or principles can you share that would help a student from any religious worldview or background do well at the university?
I would say, I mean, one, recognizing that there are different worldviews and, faith backgrounds and just, I would say, focus on trying to be more of a connector than a divider, right? And I think this is something that, in the world and in our culture, is very prevalent right now of just, focusing. There's so much focus on the differences in what people think and believe. And I think we see the result of that. And, the reality is you can bring people who have very different beliefs and can still come together and live life and get to know each other and learn from each other. And so, I've said this in other places, it's like even different faith backgrounds, it's much more effective to start with where you're similar and the
Mm-hmm.
things that you share and have in common, and then go from there. Then the starting point with which most of us, tend to start with is where are we different?
Right.
Start with where we're different and say, well, then how can I kind of convince them to be more like me? And, again, going back to the relationships, no one really is drawn to that.
Right.
But even in, different faiths and completely different backgrounds, there's common ground. And I think that's the big thing is, coming to university, knowing that there's going to be different thoughts and faiths and mindsets, and just knowing like, though, that doesn't mean you're all opposites, right? So it's
Right.
just more effective to start with, let's start with what we have in common, and then that builds a relationship, and then we can go into, oh, where do we differ? And that's really interesting. Take me through what, how you got to that. Why do you believe what you believe? So I think that's that. And then as on an individual level, I think we should be always challenging our own belief system
Mm-hmm.
more than we're challenging others' belief system, right? Because that's where, but I think it's easy to get in the mindset of challenging others. And it's like, well, we should be challenging our own.
Right.
Because regardless of what your belief system is, we all are professing that we believe in what we believe to be true. And I mean truth as in capital T truth, right? Like it's truth. And the reality is, if something is the truth, it's that dependent on what we believe or not, right? So, my personal faith doesn't need me to defend it to be true. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I think it's just maybe a little bit human nature to sort of see ourselves as the defender of this faith, as if, it needs us to defend it. It's like, well, no, people can disagree and it still holds true. So I think it's just challenge your own belief system, maybe ask, why do you believe what you believe? So then now you're better equipped to have good conversations with people, instead of focusing on, why do they believe what they believe and why don't they believe what I believe?
Right, right. And like going back to what you were saying about that relational aspect, when you start with that and you find what you have in common with people and connect, you like gain that comfort and that friendship that then opens up room for dialogue to learn from each other and like have that safe conversation. Because if you're defensive off the bat, like no one's interested in that.
Right.
You're never going to get to that, what you do share. But yeah, it's starting with that. And I think that's a great point to be questioning what you believe and making sure that you are firm in that and can know what you think and share that with other people in a loving way versus just getting defensive, maybe out of fear or out of anything else. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think really well said. The last question I have for you is, what value did Crew bring to your life as an undergrad student? And why might faith be integral or even central to doing well as a student at OSU? And like, how does faith involvement bring value that might be different from other experiences?
Yeah, so there's a few there. So I'll start with the first one of just crew. Like, so I was, so I became a Christian in high school, right? So I was kind of early on, and then I would say, my time at Miami and involved with crew there was really key, and I think strengthening my faith and helping me just kind of dive deeper because I was surrounded by, people who had kind of further on the journey, and they kind of took me along, and I was had a mentor, and so that was really crucial just to do the things like I'm talking about now. Is just sort of challenge me, like why do you believe what you believe? Do you believe what you believe?
Right.
And so, I didn't actually come up in a Christian family and was sort of raised into a Christian home. I became a Christian more kind of individually as apart from my family. And then so kind of grew in my faith throughout college. So I think that was key. And, also it wasn't that I was just like, oh, I'm just going to focus on Christianity. I mean, I was a Christian, but it also allowed me the opportunity to learn other beliefs, right? So even though I was a business major, I took a lot of religion classes as electives. And so that was really great just because, it's easy to say what you don't believe, but do you know about those other belief systems, right? And so that was really great. And then also crew was pretty crucial in bringing specific people into my life who are really key. The people became my roommates, some of my best friends I met in college through crew. People who were my wedding, my best man, were all relationships that I started. So, and these are people who I still connect with now, 20 years later. I have a kind of a core group of friends that we get together once a year, and that's still going on. And then I actually met my wife on a missions trip to Macedonia, right? So, which was completely unplanned. That was the last thing on my mind. So obviously that's a pretty impactful thing. So, it was just by being part of that and kind of having those experiences brought those people into my life. So I'm incredibly thankful for that. And then the other one was just kind of how is faith crucial to doing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that'd be integral to doing well in college.
Yeah, I mean, I think also one aspect is, just also that having faith, like recognizing like all of us are people of faith. Like that's just always something I like to clarify because, we use this language of like, person of faith and then non, right? But the reality is we're all people of faith of something, right? Whether you're atheist, agnostic, Christian, Protestant, any other faith, we're all people of faith. And so I would say though, from my aspect, speaking to my faith, it helps me keep kind of what I call like a right-sized view of myself. So, and I'm speaking more from my personal faith of like, it doesn't really kind of get me, help me think too highly of myself, but it also doesn't think too lowly of myself. So I think the sort of the combination of confidence and humility is, not thinking too highly of yourself, but also not thinking too lowly of yourself. And so to me, that's the power of the gospel is that it reminds me that, I'm not the center of the universe, right? Yeah. Even though, sometimes I live my life as if I am, and, I sort of see things as if I am. So it's a good reminder that, there's a much bigger picture. I am not the center of the universe. I am not the star of the movie. I'm the extra in the background who you can see like the top of their head. Like that's me. So it kind of puts that in perspective, but at the same time, even though, Jesus is the center of the universe in my view, based on what he did, I also have immense value, right? So it's like this sort of right-sized view of like, yes, it's not all about me, remember that, but also doesn't mean I'm completely unimportant, right? I have tremendous value, and we all do, right? So it's that cool dichotomy, and it's just a good reminder so that it helps me kind of go through life to say, remember, it's not all about you.
Right.
But also, you're loved, you have value, and I think that's a great combination to kind of walk forward in whatever situation you're in.
Yeah, that's great. I don't know if you're familiar with Tim Keller, but he calls that like the freedom of
Yeah.
self-forgetfulness,
Yeah.
thinking of yourself less, and that opens you up to things God is doing in your life. And if you believe Jesus is the center of the universe and the hero of the story, and we are have roles in that, but it's not about us, then that is really freeing and encouraging to be able to live according to what we believe. Yeah. So how do you think that differs from different experiences in college, and what like other involvement might offer?
I would say like other involvement in like other activities
Yeah,
or
yeah, just like of all the things you can do in college, how does faith differ in that way?
um, I mean, again, I think it's more of, to me, it's remembering that we're all the same in some way. Like, not like I go around saying, well, I have my faith, you don't, right?
Right.
It's it's starting with the premise that we're all, more similar than we might be different. So I think,
Mhm.
just also having an open mind to knowing that's not about me, doesn't kind of make me go into situations thinking like, what can I get out of this, right? And so it's just more about being others focused. And as you get more involved with it, it's, who is it? So just saw this quote. Actually, you just saw this quote in a class earlier, and it's just like
Okay.
of like when Simon Sinek, who's a more business writer, and I'm probably gonna botch the quote a little bit, but he says, when you focus on yourself, you're gonna get moments of happiness,
Right.
right? When you focus on others, you get like a lifetime of purpose, or
Yeah.
maybe a lifetime of fulfillment. One of those two words.
Yeah.
One of those two, right? That's the gist. And I think that's, as you have this amazing opportunity in university to have access to just all these different experiences and people and people who are, different mindset. And I think that's just such a really good thing to do to, because I think there's value in being surrounded by people who share your similar values and belief systems, because, you can want to grow into that. But there is a risk to being sort of in a bubble where that's all you're surrounded by.
Yeah.
Um, so I think there's like that healthy balance of also getting yourself exposure to other, ways of thinking, for that purpose, as I talked about earlier, because that's how you build those connections, right?
Right.
So instead of being sort of siloed and more comfortable in the people with the people who share your, belief systems and values, can you make yourself a little bit uncomfortable, right? But it's not extreme. It's like, well, I'm just going to just go off and do everything I can, because you still want to hold true to those relationships. But I just think it's a special time and the reality is it gets much harder after you graduate,
Yeah.
right? Because, it's still, you have to make it much more of a priority to really do a lot of things that come more easily in the university environment. It's just the way it is. So I always, tell my students, like, get experiences, if you have time, try different groups and try different, um, hobbies and things like that. And just take advantage of this time that's really special.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point. And college is one of those few times in life where we really get to like explore and get involved and have a lot of freedom
Yeah.
to experience that development that we then put into action once we graduate and go out. So, yeah.
And life is still good afterwards, right? It's not like, oh, those are the best 4 years of my life. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Hopefully it continues to get better. But I always say, I don't look back and say that was the best time of my life, because hopefully the best time of my life is still ahead of me. But
Yeah.
it was definitely a very special and unique time of my life, that, I still pull from, and use hopefully even now. But, so my encouragement to students is just to really be proactive. Uh,
Yeah.
take a proactive, part in the story that you're going to have for these 4 or 5 years. Because the other downside is, because there's so many people and so many opportunities, things don't just sort of fall on your lap, right? You do have to kind of be a little bit proactive, seek out those opportunities, those experiences, because those are the ones that are going to kind of be life-changing and bring people into your life that you don't realize are actually going to be crucial to your life 20 years later.
Right.
Um, so can you hear that?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
All good.
So that's the 1-year-old. She must have learning to walk, so she must have just had a little fall.
Oh, no. Oh, well, that is just the world we live in these days. So,
Right. My
yeah.
daughter was doing gym class above me, and I was like,
Oh, really?
Make sure you don't jump around too much. So she's in a room doing gym class right now. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this will be,
Yeah. But
yep, it's all right.
thank you so much for your time today. And yeah, I think it's great. You said some wonderful things that really would motivate students to be proactive
Yeah.
now, get involved and do the exploration, so that they can look back on these 4 years and point to it as foundational and developmental, and that they grew because of it and hopefully are more successful in however they define that in life. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. Is there any closing
Oh,
thoughts or things to add?
just I'll just cap is like this is a very special time. You know, again, try to be connectors versus be a proactive about your time here of what you want to come away with because it's more than anybody else's.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, great. Well,
Okay,
I think
cool.
that all I have to ask of you, but thank you to everyone who tuned in and watched. As Professor LaCross said, don't put off checking out different student organizations like Crew and getting involved. If you are interested in Crew and want to get more information, there is a link in our bio if you go to our profile, where you can look for crewohiostate.com and then hit the get button to get connected with people on campus, whether to have a support system, group of friends, or just discover more about your spirituality. But that is at the link in our bio. And thank you again to Professor LaCross for joining us. You can learn about him and our network of Christian professors and scholars at Ohio State. That's called the Thompson Institute, at their website, thethompsoninstitute.org. But join us again in 2 weeks for the next series of Do Well. And we would love to see you then. Thank you again, Professor.
Thank you. All right. See you, everybody.
Have a good one.